We're ready now to talk about product. Let's take a walk over to the rocks here in Cabo and take a look at the number of different products that we're going to be working with this evening.
First thing we usually start with are your handheld or your base type signals, things that are not aerial. These are day-night signals. They're indicated on the top of the flare itself with a day-night symbol. Your handhelds go for 3 minutes. This will give you a 7-mile visibility while you're standing on the deck. As we demonstrate these, we'll show you what the slag and other things that come off that you need to be aware of as you're firing them off. Another base signal is a smoke flare. Now, smoke flare is only a day signal, so this would not qualify for your minimum requirements, but it is a good additional signal to have with you. Moving from the base flares to your first level of aerial would be your 12-gauge meteors. These are 3 12-gauge meteors that we put into a launcher. These meteors fire for 7 seconds apiece, and again, when we talk about minimums, that's one of the things we like to talk about, is that there's a total of 21 seconds here. Although it does meet the minimum requirements, that's a total of 21 seconds. Onto your next level up on your aerial signals comes into your 25 millimeter. 25 millimeter, as you can see, have larger meteors. The meteors themselves have larger higher burn times, and with the larger meter can be seen much further. Also, the capability of this 25 millimeter launcher allows you to shoot aerials that are parachute flares. These go up to 1,000 feet and will hang in the air for up to 25 seconds.
Part of the nomenclature that you'll see on the Orion product is the 2 words alert and locate. Alert meaning you need to get someone's attention when you're in trouble. Locate is the homing part of getting people to come to you when they finally see you out there. So it's important to understand the difference between the two. Alert is usually an aerial type flare. Locate is usually a handheld type device. The handheld type device, it could be an orange smoke flare, it could be the regular handheld red flare, it could also be a flag, it could also be a mirror. Anything that gets someone to you when you're in trouble. One of the things that we're not going to be demonstrating tonight are Solas flares, and Solas flares are an international designation called Safety of Life at Sea. You want to talk a little bit about Solas flares, Kurt?
Yeah, the Solas flares are a much higher standard for the recreational boater. They're done for the commercial boats themselves. So that regulation or that requirement is much greater. Most of the recreational consumers will not use them. However, there are situations where a consumer may want to have Solas flares, especially if they are a blue water type boater where they're going out fishing to large distances, 20 miles or so offshore. Solas flares are a very good option to have because of their capabilities and the larger meteors that are much easier to be seen.
Kurt, let's talk a little bit about expiration date on product. The Coast Guard requirement is that you must have 3 day-night signals on your boat. That the day requirement is they must be within 42 months of manufacture, which basically gives the boaters 3 years of use of product on the boat. Now, the important thing about expiration dates, you can compare it to film or pharmaceuticals. Flares are made up of a number of different chemicals, and they will degrade over time just like pharmaceuticals will, and just like they have an expiration date too. So you want to have up-to-date flares on your boat, because while flares may still operate after 42 months, they may not meet the minimum specifications as advertised. So if we look at some of this packaging, on the actual package here of the 12-gauge basic, you'll see an actual expiration date on the back of the package that you can look for. And Kurt, also in addition, it's on the product too.
You'll see them right on every product. It is also stamped right on it. Same with the meteors themselves.
Kurt, let's talk a little bit about the construction of the handheld flare. Obviously, these things they undergo a lot of testing at the Orion plant, which we'll talk about shortly. But why don't we talk about a little bit about the construction of the handheld flare?
The flare itself, although it looks just like a simple piece, it does have a mylar coating on the outside as the label itself. The red portion of the flare is the actual portion that burns. The white portion is where you would keep your hand. That part does not get hot. The ends of these do have a double lip seal to keep water out of them. And the igniter, which is under here, is also sealed underneath.
There's an extensive amount of testing that goes on with the Orion product. Number one, What happens is there's an independent test lab that comes into the Orion plant and tests these products quarterly. They'll take a batch lot of product and make sure that it will still work under the severest of conditions. For example, what they'll do is they'll put the handhelds and the aerials in an oven at 276 degrees for 24 hours, making sure that these things don't go off by themselves. Secondly, they'll also put the product underwater for 24 hours, 4 inches of water, and pull them out and make sure that they also work. With the handheld flares, they'll take the cap off the flare, they'll put the flare underwater, expose it for 5 minutes, and then make sure the product still works. There's an extensive amount of testing that goes on to make sure that these products will work in a wet environment. So now we're getting ready to do the demonstration, but we want to talk to the consumer a little bit about why you would actually fire a flare. It's important to know that you cannot fire these flares unless you're actually in trouble. The firing of flares when you're not in trouble is punishable as a felony by law. It's the same thing as if you are using a VHF radio and you are sending a mayday signal out, and it's not a situation where you're actually in trouble. It's the same thing when you fire off a flare. So you're in trouble as a boater. What do? Your boat's sinking. The first thing you obviously need to do is get to the radio and make sure you're sending out your mayday to the other boaters and the Coast Guard in the area. Secondly, start gathering your materials that you might need for water immersion, whether it be your EPIRB, your life jackets, other products. At the same time, if you see another vessel in the area, you should gather those distress signals that you have and fire off those aerials, and it's recommended to fire them off in tandem so that that boat in the distance can see you. Now, if you're going down in a boat and you don't see a vessel anywhere near in the area, it's really not wise to use those aerials at that time, because they're gone once you use them. And if there's not a boat in the area that can see those aerials, there's no sense in firing them off.